Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Well, I was brought out of the bullpen, so let's do this.
All right, we're gonna fire it up. We're gonna get him warm with some rapid fire. So I asked Marcus Freeman today if the Irish defensive line missed the edge that Gabe Rubio gave them last week against Stanford when he missed the first 5 games due to injury. Here is Freeman's response.
I think you have a big human, a big body that really plays at a high rate, and he has a lot of velocity with the way he plays. So we absolutely missed, the presence that he brings to this defense. The thing with Gabe is he's continuously learning how to control that aggression, right? And to play with details, and he's doing a much better job at that. He's going to be a guy that continues to improve because he plays with the effort, he plays with the motor, the disruptive mindset that he has, and now he's continuing to improve on the details of the position. So he's only going to continue to get better.
So you probably didn't hear yesterday, but Al Golden a couple of days ago said that Gabe Rubio is a rolling ball of nails. That's how he plays, like a rolling ball of nails. So what do you think about what you just heard there?
Yeah, I think that Marcus Freeman sounds very appreciative to have, someone back that brings some experience and then someone that's also going to provide some toughness, throughout some of these injuries that the Notre Dame defensive line is facing. So it's nice to get, like a fresh body almost kind of halfway through the season, considering all of the different injuries that you're facing against, along the defensive line. And the way he differs from like a freshman or a first time player is he's been in the defense before. He knows what he's doing. So again, I think it's when someone's fresh like that, it brings a certain intensity to things, right? And I think that's what the defense was kind of missing the most in that group is just someone to kind of provide support when they've been continuously losing, amongst the defensive line throughout the season. You finally got an addition instead of a subtraction.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with what Freeman's saying. Like just the fact that you've got a 6'5", 316-pound body in there, which is the biggest line or biggest man that Notre Dame, has thrown on that defensive line this year. They definitely miss that. They miss his man-sized strength. They miss his man-sized body, and he gave them that. And I do feel like just sort of that edge that Al Golden was talking about, and Riley Mills kind of talked about it as well, because Mills was saying, look, when Rubio's out there, somebody's going to get knocked on their butt. And to me, it just feels like when you watch the rest of those guys play last week, like maybe some of this edge that I'm talking about with Gabe Rubio rubbed off on Howard Cross and Riley Mills a little bit because they were a heck of a lot more destructive last week. And Rubio brought his own brand of destructiveness as well. So I'm really kind of excited to see how this goes, how going forward with him being a part of this and what this whole interior defensive line turns into if they can continue to elevate their play off of last week.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to be better, and they're going to be more versatile with Gabe Rubio back. He just adds a completely different element, like you were saying, the size and the tenacity. So it'll be a good test against Georgia Tech this weekend, considering, in all likelihood, how much Georgia Tech will want to run the ball and how effectively they can run the ball.
Yep. Again, they will have a better offensive line than what Stanford has, so it's going to be a good test for Notre Dame. But as Joshua Finn is saying, Josh Burnham played really well last week, and I think that he kind of brought some of that, with what you saw from his play, just the toughness that it took to get out there on the field, and then just, the great highlight play, swatting that ball away from Ashton Daniels and taking it, for the fumble and just some of the other play that they had. It just they needed some of that. They gave them some juice out there last week, and they really obviously needed it at defensive end. Stymie came in and he was talking about Tony Bennett. I don't know if you saw that, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Virginia basketball coach Tony Bennett announcing that he's going to retire. He's going to make it official at a press conference tomorrow, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, Riley Leonard is on pace to set a couple of records for a Notre Dame quarterback this season. Scale of 1 to 10. What is your confidence that Leonard breaks Brandon Wimbush's record of 14 rushing touchdowns in a season?
I'm going to go with this one a solid 9 out of 10. I think that when Notre Dame gets into the red zone, Riley Leonard is their most efficient touchdown scorer, and no one's really shown the ability to stop him in the red zone. So I think they're going to continue to, keep on doing it. And I think that Riley Leonard could end up with around 15, 16. I think it's going to be close, but he's on pace to do it. And again, when he is your most efficient red zone scorer, there's nothing that you should do to kind of go away from that. So I just think he's going to continue to be the guy. So 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and I mean, like when you look at, he's got 4 just in the last 3 games, and he's got 7 going back to the Purdue game when he scored 3 against him. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. I think that when you look at where he is right now, I completely agree with what you're saying. And literally, it's like it almost still kind of catches you by surprise, even though it probably shouldn't by now. Once they get deep in that red zone, especially if it's first down deep in the red zone, it's just so easy for him. All he needs is that one seam, and the next thing you know, he's in the end zone on that quarterback power. So he's the touchdown record. I think that to me, he is all but a lock to get this year. The other one, scale of 1 to 10, your confidence that Leonard breaks Tony Rice's single season rushing record of 884 yards. And again, this is for a Notre Dame quarterback. Tony Rice with the record, 884 yards. Your confidence Leonard will get that one?
This one again for me is almost a 10 out of 10. I'm going to go 9 out of 10. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's just close to 500.
447 yards he has right now.
100 yards right now, 480. Does that sound right?
447.
So he's literally because they've played 6 games so far, so they're at the halfway point. So he's tracking right at halfway right now. I think that he's going to have more opportunities to run the ball going forward. And it seems like him and Jeremiah Love are going to be the guys getting the most carries. So I'm going to go. I'll even say a 10 on this one. I think he's going to just get into the 900s.
I'm going to go a 9. Like I said, I'm more confident on the touchdowns. I'm going to go 9 on this, even though he's well on pace. He's more than halfway there right now, but sometimes you just never know with flow of the game and those kind of things. If maybe, he ends up close, but he misses it by 20 yards or something like that. I mean, if they keep running this offense, well, let's think 50 yards a game would get him 300 yards, right? So 60 yards per game would get him 360. So he still has to have it's still a fairly healthy pace that he has to be on to get it. So I'll go 9 out of 10 though on this one. I'm still pretty confident, but I'm more confident that he gets the touchdowns than the yardage. So final question on this. Do you see it at all as a bad thing if he breaks either one of these records? Because I've seen this kind of discussed as a pejorative that, because he's a quarterback and these are rushing records for a quarterback. Do you see this at all as a bad thing?
No, I don't see how this could be a bad thing at all, as long as he is producing, overall yards, whether that's rushing or passing, and producing overall touchdowns, whether that's rushing or passing. I have no bias against how he does it, and I wouldn't feel any indifferent about it. It's a part of his game, and as long as they're effectively moving the ball and winning games, that's really all that matters to me.
I know. It just feels like there's this stigma still, that because he's a quarterback, if you're not throwing for the, 300 yards a game and it's 2024, people aren't going to be satisfied with it. Again, all those yards count in Notre Dame's favor. All those touchdowns he scores count in Notre Dame's favor. It doesn't matter if he's throwing them or running them or handing the ball off to somebody else and letting them run it in. It wasn't a bad thing when old Johnny Football ran for over 1,400 yards. It wasn't a bad thing when Jaden Daniels ran for over 1,100 last year. So I don't get, why people would still be thinking this is a bad thing. If it helps the offense, which it does, it's only a good thing. And Tom says, I went in more comfortable throwing the ball downfield. I mean, again, we've seen a continuation of that the last couple of games. To me, his comfort level in throwing the ball downfield, like his ability to run the ball and run the ball when he needs to, is still part of that. I think that that's part of his juice, that he needs that in part to make him go. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that his throwing game ultimately is a confidence with how he is kind of, being kind of the orchestrator of the game and the offense. If he can get into his legs and get comfortable and get settled in and feel like he has, firm control of the game, or the game is in his hands, I do think that the passing naturally builds off of that. So, it's kind of a back and forth. As he starts hitting some passes and as he starts running the ball more effectively, I think he's like that game NBA Jam where guys kind of like catch on fire, or like NFL Blitz when you could catch on fire. Riley Leonard catches on fire as the game goes on, as he makes big runs, as he starts to make completions. And then I think you'll see some of those like fireballs, downfield once teams are kind of caught sleeping, because he has lulled them in with his running ability.
Yeah, exactly. And he is not going to, be seeing some of the greatest defenses either, especially passing defenses here coming down the stretch. Georgia Tech's team pass efficiency defense is 105th in the nation. That is only 14 spots higher than Stanford's pass efficiency defense was last week. So like, when you look at this matchup this weekend, and there's like, I just think that he's going to have a really, like, Navy in a couple of weeks is number 53 right now, which is solid. Interesting that Michigan and Georgia rank 63 and 64 in pass efficiency defense. USC, though, ranks 71st, so the defenses he's going to face, Virginia ranks 87th in pass efficiency defense. So I think that he's going to have some opportunities to continue to look better in the passing game. But again, I think that his running game and kind of how his game feeds off that still needs to be a big part of it. So this one comes from the Champions Lounge. It is from I Am Tenzin. I am, son of a Aang and all that stuff. It's about the situation last week when Notre Dame was winning a lopsided game with the reserves in the game and still throwing the ball and trying to score in the fourth quarter. So the question is it running up the score when you let your reserves actually play the game and run the offense, or should you just waste time by kneeling down? What do you think?
No, I think that you have earned the right to do whatever you want in that situation by putting yourself in a lead, to have the ultimately the decision to put in your backups. So, the backups have to develop as well. They've practiced all week. It's their turn to, essentially run the show. And I don't think there should be any limitations to what's in your playbook, both offensively and defensively. I think it should be ran just like the ones in there were in there, and exactly, what you would be trying to accomplish if the game was still close, essentially, right? Like the backups don't want to get in there and just go hand the ball off and run the ball a million times. Like the quarterbacks want to throw it. They want to, score some points and move the ball downfield. And then vice versa on defense, like you can still get into your blitz schemes and your pressure schemes and that sort of stuff as well. Because again, if God forbid, and something happens and someone gets hurt and you have to step in, you're not just going to be running this vanilla playbook, like I guess some of these people would like you to. You're expected to, do exactly what the first strings should be able to do. So I think you should be able to practice that as well when given the opportunity.
So Tom says, I can't believe people are still talking about this. I saw this earlier in the week and I had it on my list and I kept forgetting to slip it into rapid fire. So that's why it's in there right now. I would have talked about it earlier in the week, but like Joe says, a few Notre Dame fans were complaining and trying to equate it with what Miami did in Jerry Faust's last game, forgetting that Miami left the starters in. That was the issue. Yes, that's the point. There's a big difference between your starters still throwing the ball and, doing that kind of stuff downfield when it's as opposed to the number two guys. And it's obvious that Notre Dame had the number two guys in there. And, look, if Stanford or Purdue or, whoever in these situations wants to keep their starters in, it's definitely fair game. But, both coaches know you've got your number twos in there and some number threes in there as well. Like the coach on the other side understands that, I think, because if he was in the same situation, he'd be wanting to do the same thing. I mean, it's how you help develop your program. It's how the program continues to grow. Those are the reps. Those are the real game reps that those guys get. The only real game reps those guys get. So there's a huge difference between the starters staying in the game and you're still throwing the ball downfield and trying to score versus the reserves in there doing the same thing. That's developmental time for those guys. It's like in a basketball game. Should you just stand there and hold the ball and let the shot clock wind down every time if you're winning a blowout, or do you let your bench players who don't get to play very much actually go out there and try to score? Of course you let them go out there and try to score. That's the opportunities that they get. So, Jess, if you could pick one classic game to go back in time and watch in person, what would that game be?
So I had a couple finalists. I had the Red Sox and Yankees Game 7 from when the Red Sox were down 3-0 in the ALCS. I forget what year that was.
04.
Probably potentially when the Cubs Game 7 against the then Indians to win the World Series. I thought about Muhammad Ali and Frazier, a boxing match. That would be pretty fun.
Goes Frazier.
And then the last one would be the 2006 Rose Bowl between USC and Texas. Vince Young, USC. That was like just a David and not David and Goliath, just kind of like two. I don't know, just like back and forth. Number one versus number two. USC had won, I think, like 34 straight games. They were the defending two-time champs. So it was just a great game, and watching USC lose, I'll never forget. I remember watching Vince Young run in that touchdown in the corner of the end zone. For some reason, I always kind of can remember that play. So I think that's the game I'd ultimately go with out of my list of four there.
I knew you'd have a long list. I was wondering how long the list would be. You didn't disappoint. Those are all some really excellent choices there. Josh Baffo, the motivational business banker, says the 93 Notre Dame Florida State game, hands down. That would be a great one. I would say Notre Dame Miami 1988. Like that would be the first one I think that I would want to go to. Catholics versus convicts, like Joe Allen is saying there, just like everything, all the buildup to that game, and Notre Dame and Miami, in the heat of that rivalry coming out of those years that was just being referenced with Jimmy Johnson and Miami running it up on Notre Dame. I would love to go back and be able to go to that 88 Notre Dame Miami game at Notre Dame Stadium. Baseball, there's a couple. I would go Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. That was the Bill Buckner, Mookie Wilson game. When the Mets came back, it looked like the Red Sox were about to lock up the World Series, but they didn't do it, and the Mets ended up winning on that ground ball that got through Bill Buckner's legs. One of the all-time classic moments in World Series baseball history. I would also say Game 4 of that same ALCS that you were talking about, the one that started the comeback for the Red Sox against the Yankees, when Kevin Millar walks, Dave Roberts gets on, he steals second base, scores on Billy Miller's single to tie the game. They go extra innings. It ends up being a marathon, and then Ortiz wins it in extra innings. So those would be my top two right there. Or I guess that would be my top three. Those would be the three that I would go with. A lot of boxing that I like to. There's like so much. Like Hearns Hagler like that would be kind of the peak boxing for me.
Another one I considered was the Mario Chalmers KU basketball championship win. That would be a fun one to revisit.
I think that one. And I might even go the 88 Kansas championship when they beat Oklahoma and Mookie Blaylock in the national championship game. Did you know that Pearl Jam? Did you know that Pearl Jam was called Mookie Blaylock before they changed their name to Pearl Jam?
I did not know that.
Yep, because they were such Mookie Blaylock fans basically, and their album 10 was also an ode to Mookie because he wore number 10.
I didn't know these things.
Now you know. I mean, you probably don't listen to very much Pearl Jam, but that's okay. Okay, a couple others here tonight. Which receiver will make the bigger impact after being traded this week? Amari Cooper to Buffalo, Davante Adams to the Jets.
I think this one is simple. I think that Davante Adams might have, a little bit more talent, but I think Amari Cooper is going to a better team and an organization that's in better shape right now. And I think that Buffalo needs someone like Amari Cooper to kind of help out, offensively. And I think that Josh Allen isn't going to shy away, from throwing him the ball. And also with the Jets, Davante Adams still has, the younger and more, supple Garrett Wilson to contend with as well, and Breece Hall in the backfield. So, I think that Amari Cooper is going to do more for his team, essentially.
I think so as well. Like they've been needing, after losing Diggs in the offseason, they've been needing a real number one type receiver. Larry says Amari Dropper. I think he'll be more locked in now that, he's got a real quarterback to throw him the ball. That's what that offense need. They needed some kind of receiver. He's only 30 years old, so he's starting to get there a little bit peak, but I think that he can give them a lot. We were talking about earlier this week with Davante Adams going to the Jets. I just see more drama coming there. I agree with what Joe says. Rodgers is mid. He's mid at best, I think, right now, where he is in his career. Like he couldn't connect with Garrett Wilson enough. Garrett Wilson's supposed to be one of the best young receivers in the game right now. Okay, there's a connection. He and Davante Adams go back, but I just don't see it making that much impact. I think that Amari Cooper is going to have more impact in Buffalo. So final one tonight, Virginia basketball coach Tony Bennett is retiring. He is only 55 years old. How shocking is this news that Tony Bennett is calling it quits?
Is he calling it quits right now, like before the season starts, or is this his last season as a head coach?
Apparently right now, that he is like effective immediately, was the reports that I saw coming out, that he is hanging it up before the season even starts.
Well, when I hear that, the first thing I think of is, what did he do wrong?
Yeah, I know, right?
What else is about to be coming out in the next couple of years? But, I do think he is young to be ultimately calling quits. He could also be trying to get out of Virginia too. Who's to say he doesn't pop up again in the next couple of years when a different head coaching gig comes up. But, I thought that Virginia and what they were and the style that they played kind of peaked a few years ago. And when they lost kind of, early in the round of the NCAA tournament, I think the next year they kind of got a little bit deeper, but I just don't think that they hit their ceiling essentially as a program. And so in that regard, I do understand it, but I think that he might be done with Virginia, but I don't think he's done quite yet as a head coach.
He's only 55. I mean, assuming that everything, that there's not some, deep, dark secret behind all of this, I would think that he's going to jump on TV and, be a really good TV commentator someplace, assuming that he actually does hang it up. I mean, the timing is obviously odd because you're just a couple of weeks from your season starting. Yeah. So to be doing it right now, there might be some health stuff. You never know. It's a very high stressed career. He's only 55 years old, but he brought unprecedented success to Virginia. Like, Virginia obviously had its moments in the Ralph Sampson days, like back in the early 80s and that kind of thing, but they went a long time before they ever had the kind of success that they had under Tony Bennett. Although I was a little surprised to see that, he won the national championship in 2019. That's the only Final Four that he ever took Virginia to, with all the success that they had. Of course, they became the first number 1 seed to get knocked out in the first round the year before that by UMBC, and they bounced back the next year to win it all. But that's the only Final Four that he ever led Virginia to, was when he won that national championship in 2019. But a great career. Like you look at like him and Brian O'Connor, who of course was an assistant baseball coach at Notre Dame, who's been the head coach out there at Virginia for a long time and also won a national championship. Both of those guys did things that nobody else was ever able to do with both of those sports out there at Virginia. So great one, Tony Bennett. Hopefully everything is good. Everything is on the up and up. But again, the timing is very unusual. There's a press conference for tomorrow. I guess we'll see what we find out when that happens. All right, Jess, enjoyed it as always. Good to talk to you for the second time this week. Now you're back for full shows as of next week. Is that the understanding?
Potentially.
My either you are or you aren't.
Your people, we're in a contract holdout.
Yes.
We'll see. You might get me, you might not.
All right. Yeah, Joe's right. He made Washington State relevant as well before he went out. I mean, and that's like when you look at Tony Bennett, that's good news for Notre Dame. You don't have to worry about that pack line defense anymore, unless whoever takes over, they might still be playing it or whatever, but I don't think that they can probably coach it to the level that he did. But be glad to see that pack line out of the ACC and Notre Dame have hopefully more success against Virginia. That's been a tough one to beat over the years. All right, hit that like button before you go. Don't forget, we've got IB Countdown to Kickoff coming up tomorrow. Enjoy the game this weekend, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Peace.